And welcome to the 40th episode of Into the Rift. I am your usual host, Stephen Wynn. We have been away for a long time than we expected. We were supposed to do a roundup show for IEM San Jose, but all of us have been incredibly busy. So let's introduce our busy cast of panels. First of all, we've got Emily, who's still here. Writer for Lowly Sports, League of Legends, and Splice. Right?
Yep.
Stupid name, in my opinion. No offense. Look, I just don't think it makes sense. I'm just really confused at why it's named Splice. But maybe Nestor, who also writes for Splice, can enlighten me on that later. Who's also former GP10, current analyst, remote analyst for Energy.
Energy, yeah.
What did I say?
I heard MG.
I meant to say Energy. And Stillwell can't be with us today. He's busy being
at work.
Adults.
Yeah.
Weird thing to be honest. But with me, I have famous China Talk person, Kelsey. Hi, welcome back.
Famous China Talk person. That's probably one of the better titles I've ever had. Yeah, so, hello.
No webcam for her today. She'll be Doindy, who is going to be at IEM Cologne, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's just kind of get right into it. We're just going to go over the team's simplest procedure, and then talk about the matchups and general expectations. Let's go over Cloud9 first. They've replaced High with Rush. No, I'm sorry. Lamination's out, High support, and Rush is in the jungle. Alright, how do we feel about this? Everyone has, for a year and a half, has been crying for High to go into support. Back when we were Paravine, I had to edit this article draft 11 times about this exact issue about Lamination moving to coach and then High being the support, but at the time, there was never like the proper evidence. So how do you feel about it now?
I feel the same way about it as him moving into the jungle role. And that he is not a jungler, and right now he's not a support.
So what is he?
I don't think he's gonna. He's basically just the shot caller of the team. You know the meme where before we said that Clear Love isn't a jungler, he's just a good team fighter. Well, with High, he's not a jungler, he's not a support, he's a mid laner. But he's not playing in mid lane now. He's playing in support, but he's not a support player. He's just the shot caller of the team, and he's the guy that's supposed to basically lead the team in game and make sure they don't screw up and they know what they're doing.
So if he's not a support, should we expect bad vision from C9 or anything like that, or is it just too early to tell with the new trinket changes?
I'm not sure, because as a jungler, he was the worst worst jungler at putting out vision compared to anyone in NA, and I'm pretty sure he was also like at the lower ends at World. So he doesn't like vision as much, but as a support, obviously you have to buy Sightstone. So it's not going to be about. So I'm interested to see what his vision output will be and how good he is at placing the correct words at the correct places.
Okay. Let me angle it this way. Because right now the current meta of the preseason is that the mid laner or the top laner and the AD carry get the blue trinket, which allows you to place an infinite amount of visible wards across the map, which means vision split across the team is a little more. The responsibility of placing the wards is spread across the team relatively even. However, High as a support should, in my opinion, be charged with vision denial. Do you think High can do it?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Like we haven't seen anything from this new C9 team, and I'm honestly just expecting C9 to play the same way that they always do with High on the team, which is they have pretty decent team fighting, and they have these interesting calls where they always trade objectives, or they always make a move, a quick sudden map movement in order to get something. So for example, if failed example actually is from last year in 2014 Worlds, where C9 faced blue and Hai was trying to get the bottom inhibitor, with Zed trying to
Yeah.
sneakily get past through all the minions. He failed, but that kind of shows the how Hai shot calls. It's very instinctive. It's very Soul QS. Sometimes it works and sometimes it fails horribly. So that's kind of what I'm expecting C9 to be. Plus the addition of Rush, so we'll see a lot more ganks, a lot more, a lot more pressure on the map than compared to C9 with Meteos.
Okay. Well, like you said, haven't seen anything from this team yet, so we'll just have to see. But I think those are pretty reasonable predictions. One last question rounding up C9. You don't have to go super in depth because it would just be a guess, and I don't know how much scrim info you have on it. But Rush and Incarnation, do you think that's going to work out?
I'm not sure. So Energy is in Korea, so we haven't scrimmed most NALCS teams.
Okay.
But in theory, Incarnation is sort of like Bjergsen, where he plays best if the jungler plays around him. And he's said, like in a Thorin interview, that he wants someone. He mentioned Svenskeren. He wants someone like Svenskeren who's really aggressive and plays around a carry. So, and I think Rush does that. And so I think that Rush would rather play around Incarnation than play around balls. And Rush, in theory, and we've seen him being able to decimate most opposing junglers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I think we'll see them working out, especially against most of the weaker teams in NA. It might become a bit harder for Rush. The best way to counter Rush is to place Vision. So if you have Vision of Rush, he's gonna be less effective. But NA teams are really bad with that. So
Okay.
I think it'll work out.
Alright, that's fair.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to ask if you think that the Rush would. You said you made the two choices like balls or Incarnation, but I think that we've seen that some junglers who are used to playing around top or mid or solo lanes have trouble playing around bottom lane. But Sneaky has been really, really strong on the team. Do you think that Rush will have trouble with that, or like do you expect him to try to play around bottom at all?
I don't know. Like that's my answer. I don't know how C9 are planning to operate, and how Hai wants the team to operate, and is Hai going to shot call the early game? I don't think when we saw him as a jungler, we saw Hai neglect top lane a lot and play more around mid and bottom, and we'd see balls die a lot, sort of like a dire situation. So we may see, and because Hai is like a prominent voice on the team, he's probably going to ask of Rush to focus bot and mid a lot more than top. So I could see most of C9's jungle focus and wards, support roams mostly being around mid bot rather than top. So we could see a dire situation, like a TSM situation for next split.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Kelsey?
Yes.
Alright. Alright, that was a pretty heavy, Nasser-intensive interrogation there.
No one wants.
I'm just testing your limits since you're an analyst for NA now.
No, it's just because no one watches NA here except me and you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm gonna be watching it next season, but yeah.
Well, you turned to the dark side.
I'm curious.
Only because Ganked by Mom was here. Let's be real, Emily.
Hey,
It's only because Ganked by Mom was
I
here.
watched Europe for Ryu, okay?
Yeah, that's exactly the logic I'm using. Speaking of Ryu, H2K is here. Who wants to cover H2K? I know you like H2K because Ryu, and I know that Kelsey watches EU. Who wants to go first?
Wow.
I was gonna say, I think
Suddenly
Kelsey
there's
should.
an entire panel discussion.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing about H2K is a lot of people focus on Forgiven, but I think that the big thing about H2K is when you talk about different jungling styles, I think this is going to be a big thing because we're talking about a lot of teams with aggressive junglers going to Intel Extreme Masters Cologne. We just mentioned we have Rush from Cloud9, and then this H2K is going to have Jankos. I think Jankos, one of the things that was really good about him as a jungler in 2014 that seemed to be different on 2015 was that he was a really creative jungler who kind of had free reign of what lanes he wanted to gank because honestly his lanes weren't super good. So he could kind of just like pick a lane to pressure or pick the enemy jungler to pressure and have free reign of when he wanted to carry or where he wanted to make plays. Of course, like overpowers the shot caller, but I think that the freedom and unpredictability of Jankos was a big asset to H2K in 2014, and it wasn't present in 2015 because the team was much more Nukeduck-centric. So I think that if Forgiven can be self-sufficient, the fact that he has two very self-sufficient and still strong solo laners is going to be a really big asset for Jankos. Especially since Jankos and Vander picked up more shot calling over 2015. So I think that H2K, the problem with H2K is I know that they haven't necessarily been practicing a lot. So that's my one question mark with them. But otherwise, if I knew that they had been practicing at least like a few weeks or something, I would say that they were my favorite for the tournament. But we'll see.
Yeah, I see them a bit similar to SK of spring this year. Where Svenskeren, just like pressured the whole map, while his three solo lanes were pretty self-sufficient and able to push all lanes. So I can like see that parallel there.
Okay, Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm really curious to see how Jankos and Vander. I know we talked a little bit about the vision control when you were asking Nasser about C9. And one of the reasons why I actually don't have a lot of hopes for C9 is I think, aren't they? They're going up against.
Xiaogu, no?
Xiaogu.
No, they're going against
no,
HK.
Oh.
Never mind.
H2K. It's those two.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No,
'cause they are
H2K.
going against
H2K.
Yeah,
H2K,
HK.
C9,
Sorry.
yeah.
And that's why, like, I actually really love this H2K roster. And Jankos and Vender, I thought their vision overall was pretty good. And I like when we were talking about when you were talking about C9, that's actually what I immediately thought of. I think it might not even be necessarily that C9's vision is particularly awful, but I think these two guys, especially since they've already worked together, they won't have to worry as much as other rosters. They're trying to come together in terms of coordinating vision. So that's something I'm going to be looking out for this team, and then everything else, everyone already covered. But I actually really like the new H2K roster. They're one of my favorite teams and not just because of Ryu. Watching out for in Europe next season.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just because of Ryu.
Okay, it's
lying.
partially
Mostly. it's there's no shame in watching it for Ryu. Okay, I'm just saying it's mostly because of Ryu.
No, I really like the roster.
Moving on to a different part of Europe, let's talk about Fnatic. I'm not sure. So we talked about it pre-show because I wanted to confirm it, but from what I understand, it's not officially announced or confirmed yet with the full roster, but we're relatively sure what it's going to be. Nasser, can you tell us?
Sorry, which roster again?
Fnatic.
Fnatic, yeah. So Spirit basically confirmed in an interview on Fomos that he's going to Fnatic, and so is Gamsu. He said, he's happy to go with he's been doing with him in Korean solo queue, and Daily Dot reported Noxiac as the replacement to Yellowstar. So it'll be Gamsu, Spirit, Febiven, Reckless, and Noxiac.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do we feel about this lineup? Because we're losing the
Not as
famous
excited.
Koreans.
Yeah,
I actually like H2K's roster better than Fnatic's roster. Because I think in terms of even though people are going to, like Kelsey said, really focus on Forgiven and giving resources to him, etc., etc., feel like resource distribution, the manner in which they play, I really like the mesh of different play styles on that roster. On paper, obviously, we don't know how they're going to play, so this is just all speculation. But then Fnatic, one of the things that made Spirit so impressive, and you two, I know, have a lot to say about this as well, but one of the things that made Spirit so impressive in China was that he just kind of like put on these ridiculous carry pants and just because he couldn't communicate with Team W and their team fighting was so bad. Like, I don't even know how to describe how bad WE's team fighting is, and I've spent a lot of time picking on Aluka in China Talk, so I won't do too much of that here, but basically they just did not have a roster that could ever get it together. So what Spirit did is he basically kind of stopped, it looked like he just kind of stopped trying to talk to them and did whatever he could to hard carry the team. So in all of their victories, that's pretty much how they won. So I'm interested to see how Spirit works on this roster. I don't know. He's a really good player. And they obviously still have Febivin, who was really good. I don't know that much about Gamsu, although there's been a lot of speculation I've seen other people talking about, so maybe you guys can offer some insight on that.
Yeah, Gamsu, I watched all of Dignitas's games, and he was one of Dignitas's top performers. He's mechanically very proficient. He does really well in solo queue and in competitive. His laning is okay, it's average, but he is really good on a certain few champions like Jarvan or also Renekton. He was like playing it even when it's not in meta, and he did really, really well with it. I don't know, it's hard to really say how good he is because he played with a team that was fairly weak for the most part in Season 5. But his TPs were nothing to note of. His laning was nothing notable. It was mostly his team fighting and his skirmishing that really stood out. But he would also kind of AFK from the map if his team did badly in the early game. And he would only really do well if he got a lot of pressure early on. And most of the games when we saw him get going, it was because Azengi or Helios, when he later replaced Zengi, and Kiwi Kid would gank for Gamsu. And when that happened, he would just take over the game with his Jarvan, with his Renekton. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out on Fnatic, who this season played a lot top-centric style of play on the map. And if we continue to see that happening with Spirit and Gamsu, if Spirit focuses a lot on the top side, especially because they're coming in together, they seem to be friends and know each other. Because if I remember correctly, Gamsu was also on blue before the Exodus.
Yeah.
So that's probably where. Yeah, so that's probably where they know each other from. So we could probably see another Huni Reignover like duo with them too.
Okay.
I have an
hey
article
there.
on this coming out tomorrow. Yeah, sorry, Skype lag. So I have an article on this coming out tomorrow, but I think the biggest thing for me is that the communication on this team I have a lot of questions about, because Yellow Star was credited a lot with both the mood and the environment. I did an interview with Reignover once where Reignover just flat out said that Yellow Star never tilts and always knows what to do. So losing that kind of force, that kind of influence is going to be huge. I think actually Spirit is the only player on the team with leadership and shot calling experience, because he shot called for WE. And it really, just watch WE's games. Their strategy, their team fighting, it was just
really bad.
Not good.
Really bad engaging.
Yeah.
Really interesting decisions. It was crazy. It was madness.
Yeah.
But
and
at the same time,
also was a really, really high ward placement jungler, but Spirit actually often forewent Sightstones to just straight up build damage and a bunch of other things. And it was really funny because when I checked Spirit's Smurf account on the Chinese solo queue, like halfway through summer, it was just all Fizz games. He just perma-spammed Fizz the entire time, and that's when you realize, okay, he kind of stopped caring, because I think it was just hard for him to feel motivated on that team, especially since I think he expressed that he didn't think his team felt motivated, he didn't feel motivated, so I think that even by the time he started to learn Mandarin Chinese, because he allegedly learned Mandarin Chinese really well and could communicate with his team, he just stopped caring. So I think this is going to be an issue with him learning the new language. Fnatic apparently has like a really committed roster, or a very serious roster in a serious game environment, so Spirit might do better there. But the thing is that I think it'll still take a lot of time and we won't see results until Extreme Masters. I think that if he's unable to communicate effectively, he'll resort to more of the hard carry style. And I just think that because Fnatic has the tools that they have with like Febiven, etc., and maybe Kamsu, then it's better for him to just try to focus on lanes and work on that. Like the big example I like to use is when they replaced him with the Chinese jungler Wushuang, a lot of people on Reddit started saying, oh, you know, Spirit was really the problem with WE all along. I just think when you watch Wushuang's games, it was obvious he was talking to his lanes. Like, it has nothing to do with him being a better jungler or not, which I don't think. I think Spirit is a better jungler. It's just that, like, oh, okay, this lane could easily get an advantage. It has a Chinese player in it. The Chinese player probably told the jungler to come. I mean, this may have happened on WE, but Spirit was just like, no, I'm not going to gank your lane. You're just going to waste it or whatever happened. I have no
Well, in
idea.
fairness, like
That
Aluka
was just
Yeah. Like,
by
like
the
you're
end
getting,
of the by the
what's
end
gonna
of the
happen if you
season,
gank
though, that team
Aluka?
was just a train wreck.
he's
Anyway,
gonna run
I
at
don't
you
have.
really fast.
I think Fnatic could be okay much later, but right now I don't think they'll be okay at Cologne.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm so iffy on this team, because I feel like they have the tools to make it work, especially with, I'd say Febiven and Reckless are both pretty self-sufficient and safe. So if you did have that kind of, okay, you have Gamsu as a carry top, and like I said, I don't know him that well, so you can correct me if that's wrong. But if Spirit did end up focusing him, like, I feel like the pieces are in place to have a good team. So then it will be highly dependent on mentality and how the team actually gets along and works together, which is always, you know, that's sometimes a coin toss.
Yeah, but while it seems like they have the like kind of an identical team with maybe a better jungler and maybe a bit worse at the top, they've lost a very important piece in Yellowstar, who was both you know, an out of game, you know, kind of like a father figure and also an in-game leader and shot caller. And I don't think Noxiac will be able to fill the big shoes, you know, the big hole Yellowstar has left. Yeah, he's not going to be able to do that. Even if he is a mechanically solid player, I don't think he has the experience or the maturity to lead the team the way that Yellowstar did. So I think they'll still.
Shot caller.
Yeah.
Sorry. Again.
I was gonna say, like, it might be. They're still going to stomp a lot of the weaker teams, but when it comes to these top teams like HDK, like Origin, both these teams I think have the cohesiveness, the right tools and communication and staff in place to already be better than Fnatic. But if Fnatic can set up that communication system that worked well for them this past season, they might be able to get ahead of these other two teams.
Okay.
But right now, I think H2K and Origin are better.
All right. You know, I came to this realization a while ago, but I'm just gonna voice it now. You know how much it sucks predicting rosters before they actually even play?
Yeah.
Because it comes down to if they can make it work.
If lots of theoreticals.
And even if like, say Fnatic doesn't look really good at this tournament, like, that's not saying that they then can't practice a ton before the season
Yeah,
and
exactly.
show up and be really good.
Mhm.
So, although I am excited for this tournament because of all the new rosters, I think it's a cool, like, I'm a lot more excited for this than I am San Jose because it is a cool look at some of the new setups.
I felt like these rosters are more in place for this tournament than the IEM San Jose rosters were, since they were like finalized / thrown together almost last second. It's like, all right, go have go do stuff.
Well, to be fair, that was the middle of the off season, and
yeah,
right now we're nearing.
I'm not blaming the teams. It's like it sucks for us and it sucks for them that they're playing so soon. But this one, yeah, it theoretically should be better quality than IEM San Jose.
Yep. But like, while it sucks to talk about teams that haven't played yet, there's still the fun of theory crafting and trying to predict how a team is going to play out. That's kind of fun. Even if sometimes the predictions go horribly wrong, like predicting Fnatic, like predicting Fnatic season 5 going to be like a mid-tier team or something, and then they end up going on 18-0 streak.
They lost the off-season, guys.
I don't know anyone. I think I maybe only know one person who thought they're going to be like super good, but all of us were like, Rainover? That guy from OGN? Really?
Yeah.
Moving on though, let's talk some China. That's why I have two people from China talk here. Let's talk about Xiaogu. The team that we all wanted to go to Worlds did not go to Worlds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we got IG.
IG. Alright, we got. I just want to say that IG just kind of disappointed us in the sense that everyone used IG to bash China enthusiasts. Even though almost all the Chinese enthusiasts were like, no, IG sucks. Like, we just watched for Kakao. That's about it, and that's all they did. We watched for Kakao, and then everyone bashed it over us. So let's talk about Xiaogu. Why is Xiaogu the better Chinese team? Is it Doinby? It's Doinby, right?
Doinby's dashing good looks.
As you can see in Kelsey's profile, like picture panel.
Yeah, look at that kid.
It's beautiful.
The true story of Xiaogu is Doinby's makeover that happened over the course of the summer, where he shed the glasses,
I actually like the glasses a lot.
I like the glasses, but I'll go first just because I wrote like a really brief thing, so I'll give like the super basic version of how Xiaogu works. Xiaogu is a team that is known for their team fighting. Primarily, they have Swift, who you might remember from Korea. He's a highly aggressive jungler, very mechanically strong, makes a lot of weird, wonky decisions, and that's why he has Doinby. And I think Doinby is probably the most contentious name on the roster because he either has people who love him or hate him. And I'll go fully on the record and admit that I thought Doinby was absolutely going to get stomped when Xiaogu first came into the LPL. I was like, yeah, this kid, he plays Katarina, and he's going to do so bad. And that's not what happened, actually, because what Doinby does is really important to how the team works, and he basically acts as Swift's support. And then they have TNT, who is, in my opinion, it's between him and, I know Kelsey and I have argued about this a couple times, but it's between him and Uzi, and then obviously Imp is kind of in the picture for his playoff performance. But throughout LPL summer, TNT was just absolutely stunning AD carry. TCT, not so much.
Yeah. For those who don't know, TCT was LMQ's more.
Is TCT just kind of not so much, or is he Kitty's level?
I mean, very few people are Kitty's level, Steven, please.
Yeah.
But I think actually they're pretty similar. They have different strengths and weaknesses, but I think that TCT really does not understand how to dictate the flow of the lane. He just gets really confused and overextends, and that's part of why their laning phase is just not good at all.
Yeah, if you remember LMQ, they were also more of a team fighting team than a laning team, and Moore, who's now TCT, was a part of that team, and he kind of brought that mentality over, and he's a pretty good team fighter. But laning, him and TNT suffer a lot during that period.
Yeah, they actually usually fall behind like significantly in lane. I'm not a fan of TCT, but guess who is? TNT, because I'm pretty sure he's the one that requested to play with him. So I mean, at least they get along, right? And then V is kind of, he exists. He does his job. I'm not like super impressed with him either. There's some concern about his champion pool, I think, going into this tournament. But
yeah, he's average. Like nothing special, but he's not horrible either. He's just
he is a really strange player. I think he suffered a little bit from 2014 Spring's Flandre syndrome, meaning that he's much more comfortable from like watching him in LSPL. You know that he's much more comfortable on carry champions, but because of the way the team is set up, he plays a lot more tanks because of the dynamic, and he isn't really focused on. So he is just so awkward in that role. I haven't really seen him play more of a carry focus since Chaogu made LPL and LSPL. Swift used to gank top a little bit more, but just because I think the bottom lanes in LSPL were just so bad that even TNT and TCT could just like kind of stomp them, so that allowed Swift to gank top a little more. But I think that with as they went into LPL, it shifted considerably so that Swift doesn't gank top much at all, and V was put on more tank champions. I don't know if Chaogu can kind of go back to more of top lane centric style, because I think Chaogu have some of the same problems that EDG did, whereas bottom lane is very used to the ganks, and their dynamic is much more comfortable around bottom lane, and also just like letting Swift farm and have freedom. So again, what do all these teams have in common? You know, an aggressive jungler that likes gold.
Takes up a lot of resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Doinby, I also like, I really like Doinby because
Doinby, honestly.
yeah. Still
I mean, really?
really?
your Twitter says, I hate Doinby. I think it's what it says.
Oh, he hates Doinby? I'm gonna get him off the
number
show.
one
I'm
fan.
sorry, guys. We're going to a quick commercial break. I'm gonna kick him.
You can't be on the show if you don't like Doinby. Or if at least you don't like appreciate what he does for the team, because he's actually really important to how this team works.
He's so good at team fighting, like especially on Victor, Lulu, and Desir. He's really good on those champions. Just mechanically, he's like on another level with those champions compared to other champions, and he's just so good at team fighting. Like having him on a team would be like, I would be so happy having him on a team. Though GBM is also kind of a similar player as well, but who I also admire a lot. For his intelligence, and I think that's something that Doinby has. Yeah, he's really smart player, and I really like players who. Like what?
I just said nice save. I would really like to have Doinby on a team, but GBM is good too, you know?
No, it's just like just to clarify. I've written about GBM, and I've written about all his good qualities and why I think he's a really, really good player and one of the top performers in Korea this past season. But anyways, back to Doinby because I love Doinby. He's just really, really smart, and I just appreciate players who are willing to sacrifice for the team, who are smart, who are really good at team fighting. Because in the end, League is gonna come down to a team fight. That's where it's gonna end. That's where it's gonna end. It's gonna end at at a team fight. It's not gonna end with the laning phase most of the time. So that's why I like Doinby. He's smart, good team fighter, and he's willing to sacrifice for the team and willing to do whatever it takes to keep Swift from dying too much.
He tries. He tries his best.
He's also like one of the most hilarious guys in person. Like I had a chance to interview him in China, and he's just really funny because it's like coming out. Him and his manager were joking about how he doesn't need a translator. I start talking and he's like, I need a translator. And he's just like this really flamboyant guy. So, if nothing else, I hope that we get to see some of his personality on stage, because I think that's one thing about Xiaogu is that they have, as a team, they have a lot of personality. And that's like one of the fun things about watching them, and also in their play style. I think that they're one of the teams that really kind of capture their personality in their play style. So it's hard not to like Xiaogu for that reason. Like, I don't think that they're a super good team, and I actually think this tournament is really bad for them stylistically. So I can see them beating Dig just because we don't really know what Dig is going to look like a whole lot. But
Yeah.
And also I'm not sold on Justice support yet, but we'll get into that. So I can see them being Dig, but I think that's probably as far as they're going to go.
Same, actually. The thing that I really hope for Xiaogu from this tournament is just that they'll be able to show off their team fighting, and people will be able to see what a fun, like, honestly unique team they are. Because there's no other team, I think, that plays the same way that Xiaogu does. And when they're on and they're doing their thing, it's really incredibly fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my introduction to Xiaogu was actually just waking up the day after and then seeing a bunch of chat messages from Kelsey and Emily about Jugger Tree.
Jugger Tree, little Jugger Tree.
No, I was actually watching that with the new China Talk host, Andy, was who I was watching that game with live. That was a really interesting game. I'll let Emily talk about it since she wrote a pretty good synopsis on it. But if we are going to talk about Jugger Tree, I mean, we might as well.
I feel like nothing else encapsulates like the spirit of Xiaogu like Jugger Tree. So basically what happens is they load up into Champion Select, fans go through, and WE first picks Victor, and this is in Demacia Cup. This is also when Xiaogu was an LSPL team, so the only things I knew about them were that they were actually kind of boring, like win lane, win game. I didn't appreciate them at all when they were in the LSPL. Like I said before, I thought that Doinby was going to be awful in LPL. And so they get into Champ Select, and their coach Hiro, who you may remember from Korea, told them that Maokai counters Victor. So obviously they pick Maokai, and you think, okay, they're going to send it top. And, you know, picks go through, etc., etc. They end up picking Lulu. And so they're sitting there, and Doinby has Lulu, and V has Maokai, and then they switch. And then they don't switch back. And so, since Maokai literally counters Victor, that's actually what they ended up doing. And basically, since they had a Janna and they had a Lulu, there's no way that that tree was dying, ever, by the end of the game. Like, so, I linked it on my Twitter the other day. I can link it again, or like we can put it in the show notes. But like if you just want to watch like the most hilarious game of people trying to kill this giant Maokai that just will not die, and that's basically how they won. And so
and thus the legend of Doinby was born.
Yeah, and Doinby, and I was like, okay, this kid
and
is
Spirit's in that game too. So
yeah, then you can watch Spirit. Get frustrated at Doinby playing Maokai mid.
It's a win-win.
Spirit tilt and Doinby at his finest. I think what that game does prove, though, is that Xiaogu is a team that is totally willing to try weird stuff if they think they can make it work for them. Which is, again, another, like, they do things that other teams don't do and make it work just because, as Kelsey pointed out, they have a really good understanding of how the dynamics, like, actually on the Rift for that team work, even if they're not the best team themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We'll eventually get back to Xiaogu when we do the quick matchup stuff. We've been on the rosters for a lot longer time than I expected. It's alright though. The next two will go pretty quickly, mainly because Ever does not have a roster.
Question mark.
We
Maybe.
don't know what's happening with their old players.
Wait,
Key
we didn't talk about Dignitas.
I know, but we'll do Ever first. It's faster.
Okay. Right.
I haven't forgotten Dig. I haven't forgotten the other NA team. Don't worry.
Gotta
Okay.
rep
NA,
broken
it's
shirt,
an
man.
NA sandwich. We start with NA and then we
Yeah,
end.
we'll start with NA and end with NA. It's all part of the plan, Aster. Come on, I'm not. Get with the program. Get with the program. All right.
All right.
I know you're eager to talk about your NA buddy Broken Shard, but we'll get to
He's
that.
not NA. He's not NA.
He's NA now.
Stuck in NA. Right.
So Ever, well, it's really quick. Don't worry. It's like the ketchup. All right. It's kind of there. We don't know what's going on with Ever. Like, their players are there or not there. Key may or may not be meant for elo boosting, but may be able to play in this tournament. I really don't know. Dude, anyone want to say anything about Ever?
I mean, I saw them in the Caspa Cup. They were pretty interesting, I guess. That tournament itself was also like obviously not the best tournament, but the question for this team is going to be who they're actually fielding as a roster. Like if it's the same Caspa Cup roster, then I think they will probably do fairly well actually. Because that roster did show, you know, some pretty solid synergy, and then also if Key is playing, I really like him as a support. Their jungler is probably the most, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know that much about Kire, but out of the junglers we're seeing at this tournament, I am not a huge fan of Ares, so he's probably one of the weaker ones out of the pool. And then their solo lanes are pretty interesting. But, I mean, there's not... Like, it's hard for me to speak to them just because the Caspa Cup was such a weird tournament to begin with.
Yeah, it was on the old patch.
Yeah, it's cool that they won, and we also don't know what roster they're bringing, if some of these players are going to be picked up by other teams even after this tournament happens. So, like, what their actual mentality is going to be coming into this tournament. It's just a huge question mark.
The biggest reason why it's a huge question mark is because they're not even like an OG and LCK team. Like, as far as I'm aware, they're not even in the Challenger circuit, right?
They are.
They're in Challenger circuit.
They are. Okay.
They failed to make LCK
This year.
versus Spenu. They lost to Spenu. If I remember correctly.
Okay. Thanks for the correction. But that, regardless, that means we are not sure whether their players are going to be picked up or not. Like Emily said, just a big question mark.
Yeah. Though, assuming they have the same roster, I think they could pull up an upset once again. I think they're even though Caspa Cup isn't the best representation of teams, they still showed some high-level ability. And I think if they were to be in LCK for the upcoming season, they would place at least in the middle of the team, around the middle of the table. So I think they could still pull up an upset versus C9 or H2K, whoever they face, if they play with the same team, the same roster. And they have this. They're one of these teams that was like kind of newly formed, but and doesn't have a lot of competitive experience, but somehow they have this weird synergy where they all click together and they somehow make it work. If you look at their games, they don't really show any high-level ability of setting up for objectives, of setting up the waves and so on. Their vision isn't that great, but their skirmishing, their team fighting, their ability to just play together and play clutch was really impressive to watch. But yeah, I think if they're going to have to play with the same roster to show the same level of ability at IEM.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. We'll leave it at that for now. We'll get back to it soon. We'll end with the NA team now, like Nasser really wants to. So Dig,
I think they're an interesting team because
they are an interesting
they
team.
they've been flamed a lot on Reddit and a bit on Twitter because they let Gamsu go, they let Core JJ go,
Mhm.
they retained Shifter and they retained Kiwi Kid, and then they also they got two European challenger junglers, so not even not challenger junglers, a challenger jungler and a challenger top. So not even LCS level, and Broken Shard got flamed because they're taking our jobs, and he said he was going to look at any challenger players, and he did, but
He did.
it seems like Smitty J and Kirei or Kyrie or whatever performed better than the prospects he was looking at, and that's not hard to believe that they did. It just seems that EU CS talent seems to have a high level of mechanical ability and a higher ceiling compared to NA challenger players, and it's really, really hard to find good challenger players that learn quickly how to play competitively. From what I've seen, there are a few, but it's not the same as the EU CS scene. So some NA examples are Moon, who we picked up, and then there's like Dardoch, who is on TLA. But I think people are kind of sleeping on their jungler, Kirei, who is really, really smart. He got to top 15 in just the couple of weeks he's been in NA. He's just been smashing solo queue, and he's from the CS scene. He was really, really, really good in the games he's played. His main champion is Elise, and he plays. He's not really a carry. He's more of a supportive style jungler who focuses a lot on vision, and he's a player who can whose learning curve. So there's the learning curve of a player that starts out who can like start off playing well in solo queue and then play really well, and then you take time to play well competitively. He's gonna have a smoother learning curve than most challenger players, just because he's a really smart player and he knows how to play competitively more than most challenger players. And that specifically comes because he knows how to play the vision game and he knows how to apply the correct pressure at the right lanes.
Okay,
As for Smitty,
just interrupting that real quickly. So you're saying he learns quickly. His main carry is Elise. Is he only good in carry junglers, or is he versatile?
He's not. He's not a primary carry jungler. He's more of a supportive style jungler.
Even so,
yeah, his Lee Sin isn't that great. It's decent, and I think Broken Shark told me he's like learning it. But Lee Sin is not really that important of a pick right now, and hasn't been for a really long time. But he's really good on Elise. He's good on the other junglers like Rek'Sai, Gragas, though Gragas isn't that good anymore. So yeah, I think on a team like Dignitas, he'll do really well with Smitty J, so transitioning Smitty J now, Smitty J is more of a carry style oriented jungler whose main champion is Riven. Though I'm not as confident in his ability to play at a high competitive level as I am with Kirei, mainly because it seems he's more of one of those players, like Flares, like Chris, that is more of a solo Q-esque type jungler, who require a lot of attention, require to get really ahead to be effective, can't really can't really take bad matchups, to sacrifice himself for the rest of the team and the team composition. And if he does, he might tilt or not perform as expected, and that'll make the team suffer.
So he needs a little more practice in transitioning into competitive, more or less.
Yeah, he needs a lot more practice to become more of a complete player. So I can see why people are upset about that signing. But considering that Ram, Broken Shard, his prerequisites for his new team was that they have to be fluent in English. So you can't get a Korean there, or a Chinese player, and that they that was like and that they have to be good. And if you look at NA has no tops, both in LCS and in Challenger. There are no tops to take. So what would the alternative be? It would be like Chris, Zig, Lurlo, Billy Boss, Brandon. All of these players are nowhere near the level of even lower level. Well, they could, with time, they could be lower level and maybe mid tier, but Smitty J is just, I would say Smitty J is just a bit better than them, just because he's better kind of mechanically, and he'll also be coming in with Kire, and he's got Broken Shard. So it's a lot of an easier time for Smitty J to set in that team compared to the other NA Challenger players.
Okay.
But also, yeah, so the way that team will work is that Apollo isn't really known for his carry style jungler, so that we'll also see Dignitas become more of a top-centric team with maybe a bit of mid-focus depending on whether the old Shifter comes back. We know Shifter has taken, a leave of absence from his old days from Coast. He hasn't been the carry type player since those days. He's become more passive, more reserved, loses lane very frequently. Broken Shard, I think, is confident that he might be able to get that carry potential out of him again. But I think that boat has sailed. But yeah, I think Smitty J, I think Dignitas will play a top-centric style.
What about their bot lane?
So their bot lane is weird because it's Apollo and Kiwi Kid, but Kiwi Kid can't play in this tournament.
Yeah, so it's Juzz's. So.
Yeah, so it's just as... I can go for another long rant about Kiwi Kid, but for the...
We can save that for another... We can save that for the pre-LCS show, because he's not going to be playing at this tournament.
For the sake of time, Apollo is a reliable, good ADC. He's kind of like, if you remember Cop, he doesn't lose lane, doesn't win it either, and he's good at team fighting, or decent at team fighting, I'd say. He's around, mid-table LCS, maybe around 5th in his position. Just as support, I have no idea. Apparently he was trying out for multiple LCS teams for the support position. This is his second role swap, or he first started as ADC and then mid and then went back to ADC last season, and now he is back. And then now he's switching over to support. I don't know what to expect of him. Some people are saying that he's better as a support player than as an ADC or even mid, and that he's climbed solo queue very high playing support only. So maybe we'll be surprised. He also mentioned that he's retiring and he's only doing this because Dignitas asked him to, and he's going to be joining their coaching staff after the tournament. So not really sure what to expect from Justice support.
Okay.
The main questions on that team is whether Smitty J can learn to become more of a complete top laner and not rely too much on ganks and resources and getting the right matchup, and whether Shifter can become the Shifter of old and not the Shifter we've been seeing recently, which is this passive reserve player who is afraid to take risks and afraid to take risks and loses lane very frequently, even in favorable matchups.
Okay. So we've given a more than detailed explanation of these teams, which saves us a little bit of time when we do the predictions. So let's start with Dig Gu, since we just recently discussed them. Given what we heard, what's your predictions, Kelsey?
I think that it's probably going to be Gu winning, just because I think that Gu are kind of a flexible team in terms of their creativity and what they can bring to the table, and I think that their experience as a roster and the fact that I think that they're a little bit different than some of the other Chinese teams, and that we've seen specifically LGD, and that when I talked to their manager, they really want to try hard and learn at this tournament rather than feeling like they're super confident, So I think that that's more of the approach they'll take, and they're a little bit more of a self-motivated team also, so I think that works with teams that have less infrastructure. So I think that Gu will be able to do something creative and adapt. Dignitas is still a very new team, and the fact that they're not playing with their main lineup is probably the biggest thing for me. Justice, probably given that he's been trying to retire, is not going to be super hard informed. So I can see that Chogu might be able to pull something out against Dignitas, and I will give them the vote of confidence for this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Chagu as well. Dignitas have only been recently formed. They don't have. I don't think they're going to get that synergy quite as quickly. They're playing with a substitute support, as Kelsey said. Chagu are, have higher synergy. They know they've been together for almost a year now, and I think their team fighting will trump that of Dignitas. Even if Dignitas gets a goal lead, Chagu are just going to be able to play a better game.
All right, Emily.
I also have Chaogu winning out. I'm really interested to see TNT and the new AD carry meta specifically. And I think again, Chaogu just isn't a team that is afraid to try some sort of wonky things if they feel like it can work with their team dynamic. And the reason why I'm a little down on Dig is pretty much the reasons that everyone else said. They're a new roster, they're not used to playing together, and then also they're missing their starting support. So that makes a huge difference.
Just a quick question, the small aside since you brought it up. Since you brought up that TNT in the AD carry meta, who is his best AD carry?
TNT?
Yeah.
I actually think it's Caitlyn. He used to play Caitlyn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He played Caitlyn a lot in LSPL and other teams. He liked to play Caitlyn a lot in LPL in 2013. He didn't really get a big chance to play Caitlyn a lot this year, so I would say that he gravitated a lot more towards like Vayne and Lucian.
Okay. All good champions in this meta. Alright, so that was just a small aside. I was just curious, since you brought that up. C9 versus H2K. Who's gonna win out the NAEU war here?
H2K.
H2K?
I'm really, really high on this roster. Like, I really like this roster.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Lemon Nation coach and high support was the
dream
swap that everyone was waiting for like a year, right?
Year and a half, like 2 years maybe.
Yeah. So, but I think I like this H2K roster a lot. I think it probably won't take them as much time as other teams to kind of get all on the same page, just because the pieces do fit together rather well. And I'm excited to see them play. I think we'll take it.
I think, with the exception of some things like language barrier and stuff like that, usually you get a pretty good idea of how good a team is going to be the first few games that you see them play. Mm-hmm. Just because I think that having some success or having some strong form early can really affect a team's mentality and ability to work through issues later on. If they don't do so well, then sometimes morale will tank like too hard early on, and so the team doesn't really work on their issues or things like that. But I think that if H2K is going to be a good team, we'll be able to kind of tell. IEM Cologne, and so that's my feeling on it. That's why I'm going to give them some optimism here and say that they'll do well in the first round. My one hesitation is I do know that Ryu has been in Korea until like this week or something, so they will have very, very, very little practice going into Extreme Masters Cologne.
Yeah. I also say H2K, but I would not count out C9 ever, because they always are able to pull out
high shot calling me. Are you pulling that on me now, sir?
It's not high shot calling. It's just high doing something,
magic.
He just like deciding on something randomly and then something works out. It's like
Isn't that cute. Shot calling? Or...
It's shot calling, but it's like it's not planned. It's really instinctive.
It's more. So, okay, so you're saying he's gonna pull out a Christmas miracle for NA fans?
I think it was Worlds where Gauntlet where it's just like, okay, let's do Baron, and sometimes it would just fail horribly, and sometimes it would win them the game. And it's just like solo queue. You're like, okay, we just lost an inhibitor. Let's do Baron. Let's do Baron. and that's how high shot calls. I know. It's just if you watch them play, that's how they shot call, and it's just like solo queue. And I don't. I wouldn't count out C9 from bringing out a win here, especially versus an H2K that is not practiced. And I'll also argue that their overall skill level of both teams is not that far off from each other, even though C9 has balls. And also that C9, even though high role swapped and they have a new jungler, I think they're already meshed a lot more than H2K has, especially since they've already been scrimming for about a month or so.
Okay. All right. So, okay, given we're not going to go into every possible scenario because honestly, what's the point when like net cafe teams have been like wrecking their predictions for like the last 2 months. So I'll just say this. The general consensus was that Chagu beats Dig. Chagu versus Fnatic. Who takes that quickly? Just
Chagu.
Chagu beats new Fnatic. Okay, from Roser.
I'm biased, but yeah, Chagu.
We're all biased for Doinby.
As much as I kind of wrecked Fnatic in my breakdown and assessment of the team, I think that their style and their ability to do well and be super aggressive early is going to be good on this meta, and we don't necessarily have an indication that Chagu will be able to have adapted to that yet. I think it could be very close. I think the way Swift and Spirit have interacted has always been close because when Spirit tries to take a game on himself, he always comes up against Swift with the support of his team. So in LPL, it usually went Chagu favored just because it would be like Spirit against the entire team of Chagu.
So,
Whereas I think that could be something to look at, but I just think that Fnatic's will probably have a solo queue style, and that could actually probably be somewhat good in this tournament, just because of all the new rosters and the fact that the meta is much more early game focused. So I'm going to say Fnatic.
I know that we don't have a lot of time, but I want to touch on the meta because Kelsey brought up an interesting point, which is whether Xiaogu can adapt to this carry top style. But I think right now the meta we're seeing is really flexible, and I think it's pointing more towards a tank / utility / engage top lane. So more of Malphite, Lissandra.
I don't think it's the carry top that I'm worried about. I think it's the tendency that Chagu loses lane is more the thing that I'm worried about.
Do you think that?
I think that like their synergy and their dynamic can work. I just think that I don't know if they can easily fix their problems with laning, and that laning has become more important and getting ahead earlier has become more important.
Thing is, I don't think Fnatic's laning is that great. I would assume that Reckless Noxiac won't lose lane; they'll go even, or maybe even go ahead since they're going against TNC and TCT. Maybe we don't, because Noxiac is that X factor, the biggest X factor on that team. But I'll predict that they'll go even in that lane, or maybe slightly ahead. Fabivin isn't really known for his laning. He's like an okay laner, and Doiby I think can hold himself in that matchup as well. And then for top, it'll be if left in their own devices, I think it'll be more or less even, and like also depending on the matchup if it's a counter or not. But also the jungle matchup here is going to be important. So if Spirit camps top, and where's Swift going to be on this map?
I think the issue with Fnatic's laning is more around the fact that their laning is passive and not super active, whereas I feel like the issues with Chaogu's laning are just that they make dumb mistakes repeatedly. And if Fnatic aren't going to be super active, they can still take advantage of dumb mistakes. So I kind of see like Fnatic still coming out ahead in laning phase because of that.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that's an interesting matchup. That's why I wanted to see Chaogu on the international stage. to see how their style matches up with all these different international opponents from Korea, NA, and Europe. So we'll get to see that here.
What about you, Emily? Chalgu or Fnatic?
Well, I'm rooting for Chaogu because I like them, but I actually think Fnatic takes this 2-1.
Okay. Alright, alright, this one's just gonna be kind of dumb to predict, honestly, between C9, H2K, and Ever. So, my last question will actually just be, who do you think we'll see in the finals? Fnatic
really
or Chaogu versus...
difficult. I think Fnatic, and then if Ever brings their if Ever brings the exact same roster they brought to Kespa Cup, and they do have a good mentality, I think they could beat H2K. I still really, really like this H2K roster though, and I don't want to bet against them. The only thing that's working against their favor is, as it has been mentioned previously, the amount of time they've actually had to practice together. So I'd tentatively say it's going to be an all-European final, but that's with the caveat that I have no idea who Ever is bringing and who's going to play. And furthermore, I guess the other thing is, like, if these players are going to other teams following this tournament, how much incentive are they going to have to perform? It could go either way. They could really, really want to perform because maybe they don't know where they're going and they want to get a good offer, or it could be the opposite. Maybe they already know if they're going somewhere else where they are going, and then there's not really a lot of incentive to do well. We'll see.
Alright, what do you think, Kelsey? Who do you think's going to be in the final?
I think Fnatic, and I'm just gonna go whole hog on H2K.
Okay.
Ever have the same roster? It's like really hard to say that, but I think. I mean, I think that Ever. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, that's why
I guess
there's
like,
such
when
a
it comes right down to it, it's like. When it gets down to it, I think I'm just going on gut at this point, which is like really terrible analysis. But,
you don't have a choice.
I mean, I think
you don't have a choice but to go with gut on the bottom side of the bracket. Like, we don't. We just don't know.
Fnatic,
like,
yeah.
we could be here for hours theory crafting every possible fucking outcome that comes on whoever brings. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's gonna be, if Ever has the same roster, I think it's gonna be Ever, Chaogu in the final.
okay.
I just think that the rosters that have had the most practice / have the most synergy and experience playing together are going to come out on top, especially in a preseason tournament, similar to what we saw at San Jose with Origin being the most dominant team. So I think we'll see those two in the final. So I'm going full anti-Western here, despite my background. And just because
the regions that you analyze, that's why you're here, to make them better.
the most experienced
right?
playing together.
Which
and
is
the most
funny because then
synergy.
you have the two
LGD.
China Talk
Everything.
analysts that are both predicting an all-European
well-
final.
I think that's a symptom
full
of
on
PTSD.
euphoria.
I know, we're
you
just
know.
like, no, I don't trust China anymore. Not betting on China ever again.
Yeah.
Basically, you're seeing like esports PTSD in action.
So maybe I'll have some esports PTSD after this event, but I think I can't
thought you
predict
already
the final
had
yet.
esports
maybe I should
PTSD from
really
Fnatic.
consider- With how poorly the Chinese teams did at Worlds, maybe I should really consider covering Europe this year. I've actually had people tell me that, like, that I should really consider covering Europe this year, just like I did.
You did.
Like, were you not here all this year?
I
Them every week.
I do already, but thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I can't predict the final yet, but those are my predictions for now. I'll have to see the two teams play, so to predict the prediction, to predict the final. But yeah, that's my final prediction. If Ever has the same roster, they'll make the final with Chaogu. If not, it'll be Chaogu versus H2K.
Okay. For me, I'm not gonna make a prediction. Like, I've made so many correct predictions on the
made-
show using the
You
most
made
ridiculous
all
logic.
the crazy, yeah. You made all the crazy predictions for Caspa Cup, and you were right.
Yeah, because I believed
You
in the
got
Net Cafe
rewarded.
teams, but I got there without like brain turned off. Like,
That's how you predict. That's how you
Like,
predict.
that's how you live in
glitches.
esports. You just turn off
literally
your
your
brain and go.
analysis.
All right. You've been living your life all around. But no, seriously, I do think it would be either Fnatic, assuming ever same roster. It's either Fnatic or QG or Xiaogu versus Upper in the finals. That's my thoughts. Luckily though, because we're not doing a show every day and we're kind of like, we would have a better educated guess on the semifinals if we watched the first day already. But that's why I have our Twitter handles on the layout. So mine's under mine, Kelsey's under hers, and everyone has their respective Twitter name under.
You can
I
see it.
haven't fixed Nasser's yet.
Oh my god.
Nasser is his Twitter tag is his actual name. It's right there. No spaces, no dash. I'm sorry. I'll fix it next time. It's not Empire 19 anymore. I'll put it in the show notes. Regardless, that's all we're gonna have for you today. It was more of a quieter show, even though we kind of rambled for a little bit during the team rosters, but I think that was necessary and saved its discussion from the predictions. Shoutouts. Nasser.
Shout out to Splice who let me create content for them, and shout out for Energy for giving me an esports job.
Dirty esports money. Emily, shoutouts.
Any money?
Shoutouts to, I guess, all of the 3 places I write at. So Liquid Legends, All Esports, and then Splice. I have a Xiaogu like basic primer that just kind of gives a little bit of not in-depth analysis, but just really basic level of how they work. And then just shout out to Xiaogu actually. Like, I really do hope that people can put aside their China hatred that they apparently still have and be able to look at this team because they're super fun to watch. And so I hope they do well, and I hope that people can kind of see them in action and see what we've been talking about for this past year. Or past split, I guess.
Kelsey, shoutouts.
So, shout out to the Score Esports because I write for them, and I will have articles out on all of the important teams, also known as the European and Chinese ones. See, the convenient thing is that even if Europe is now the second best region internationally, it means that I still cover the second and third best region, technically. But the interesting... So I've already come out with an article on H2K, and I'll have one on Fnatic and Xiaogu by the time Intel Extreme Masters Cologne starts. If you want to watch China Talk, where we'll probably talk even more about Xiaogu, because it's the only Chinese team, then we're going to go over that and rosters on probably early Friday morning, because the tournament itself starts Friday night, and we'll probably do that episode live. Anyway, you can check that out on my Twitter or whatever for more information.
Alright, for me, shout out to Esports Heaven since I write there. I had a pretty successful piece a few weeks ago about NA. It's been a pretty bad month for me this month, so I haven't gotten anything out yet, but I'll be writing again soon. Also, shout out to everyone here because this is our 40th episode, and I don't think we... I'm not sure if we ever thought we would get this far, to be honest. So thanks for helping this happen.
Yay! Congrats.
I know every time we kind of come back, we're like, oh, we'll be back next week. But then, you know, Nasser has analyst stuff to do. I have shit happening. Emily has, like...
Deathly ill.
Yeah, gets deathly ill. And then when she gets cured, I get deathly ill. Stillwell's at work or something. Other people are at work. We'll try and come back next week. That's all I'm gonna say for now. We'll try and make it a more regular thing as the LCS comes along. We're still discussing how to format future shows because I don't want to be like last year where we spent 3 hours or 2 hours and a half discussing every single game. We're not gonna do that anymore. It's no one's gonna watch the whole thing. Yeah, not even I won't watch the whole thing. I will be hosting it. I'll turn my brain off for half of it. So we'll try to come with a more standard, better show format for us and for you, so that the shows are shorter, like the ones we've been doing for these shorter tournaments. But either way, we'll be doing our best to keep high quality for you. All right. Anyway, that's been the 40th episode of Into the Rift. Thanks for tuning in.
Yay.
Bye.